Well, let's stay with the floods. AmaZulu King, Mr. Zulu KwaZulu-Natal, also weighing in on this. He has offered his condolences to the families of those who died in the recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal. A number of areas were affected by the heavy downpours. Over 260 people have been relocated by these floods.
I would like to say my deepest heart feelings for the victims who just recently passed in the recent floods. But as I know, our emergency institutions will do what they have to do. It is an issue of human settlements and where we put those people after they have been relocated from their homes which have been damaged by the floods.
Well, let's get more detail now and some perspective on what the government is doing, particularly in the area of KZN, as it regards the people who have been affected by the floods. Joining us for this conversation is the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa. Minister, good evening to you and thank you for your time. Firstly, can we start with the tally of the number of people who have lost their lives in KwaZulu-Natal owing to the recent floods? Do you have those figures with you?
Good evening, Pauline and the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Actually, I would want to not tally the numbers because one is too many. But join His Majesty, the King of the Zulu Nation, for expressing his condolences to the deaths of the people who have perished over the floods in KwaZulu-Natal. It is a disheartening moment that day after day, as we woke up again with other terrifying pictures as to how people lose their buildings, but worse, one family who lost about 3 members at the same time. It's very unfortunate, and we convey our condolences.
How is the government helping in this situation, Minister?
This morning, Tony, I convened my team, the head of disaster management, the director general, and requested them for an urgent meeting to be convened tomorrow morning. We need an urgent action, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. For the past week, we have seen the rain throughout the country, but in KwaZulu-Natal, it has resulted into death of human beings. And we are sitting on a time-ticking bomb. The people who are living on flood plains, we need to act quickly before we wake up in the morning with hundreds of people washed away. Tomorrow morning, we will lay out the roadmap, and I listened also to what His Majesty said today, because our intention as Cogta was that next week, on an urgent basis, we need to call all the stakeholders, Cogta in KwaZulu-Natal, Department of Transport, the government of the province, eThekwini Metro, and all NGOs who always come on board, and the business chamber, so that we collectively map out how do we help to relocate people who are living in the floodplains before we experience a catastrophe. The government alone, human settlement in terms of resources, can only go to a certain extent, but a collaborative approach is now needed. And I'm confident that we are going to rise to the occasion in terms of identifying and releasing land, because one of the challenge is the non-availability of land when you want to reallocate the people in the floodplains. Even if human settlement says I can come on board, but there is no land available.
Yeah.
But in this joint effort, we must identify land and we must have means to acquire that land so that we start removing permanently people in the floodplains, because it rains during the night where you will have no chance to evacuate them before the following day.
Minister, there are suggestions that the people who are affected once again this time around by these floods could be the same people that were affected back in 2022 by those severe floods. Are you aware of this situation? Is it indeed a fact that some of the people affected now are victims of the 2022 floods?
Indeed, Pauline, people were removed to community centers as a temporary measure. And mind you, some of them, children were schooling closer to where they were staying. And after the disaster, people just went back to their areas, irrespective that they are in the floodplains, simply because there is no alternative land in which they are permanently settled with a shelter that accords sufficient human dignity. That is why, as I said in the morning to our team, we need to act fast before we wake up with a catastrophe. People in the floodplains, if you remove them temporarily, once the floods are over, they will go back. The best thing to do is to find a settlement to settle them permanently, and you block anyone who will reoccupy that place, whether it's a new person or is the same person who is renting a house somewhere. You permanently block that there is no entry in this area. And we need a collaborative approach with the traditional leaders, with the councillors, with everybody who is a community leader, the civil society, that once people have been removed in an area, there shall be no one allowed to reoccupy that place, because it will be a vicious cycle. You will never resolve it if you allow other people to occupy that particular place.
Minister, your admission here tonight is, number one, crucial, but it also is an indictment on government, because where are the enforcement measures? If the people that are affected now were previously in shelters as a result of the 2022 floods, and because there is no monitoring, they simply went back because there was no land where they were ultimately going to be settled. That's an indictment on government, Minister Hlabisa. What responsibility does government take in this regard? But second of all, what's taking so long in trying to find suitable land so that they can be settled?
Probably we all carry the responsibility. The citizens of South Africa and the government, we equally carry a responsibility to save our lives as individuals and as a government to protect our people. The first thing that must be a solution, find the land, so that if you say you can't go there, you provide a permanent area where a person is going to reside. That is why I'm saying, Claudia, as a minister, I said we need to act quick and fast. You cannot keep people for 2 years or 3 years in a community hall where there is no privacy, far away from the place of work and school, and you could not assist in placing children in close by school in a temporary area. But if you find a permanent area, you can reallocate the children from their previous schools to the nearby schools. That is why we want to appeal to our people. those who have been settled in public as community places as of now, they must not go back to areas that are prone to floods while we are seeking an alternative. As I said, we need to act faster, not to take too long before we get land. That is why all stakeholders are going to be mobilized together so that even the business sector, where money is needed, can be mobilized, and the owners of land to be willing to relinquish land to the government so that we can save our lives before we experience a catastrophe.
You mentioned the king of the Zulu nation, and he touched on exactly this issue of either Amakhosi or Izinduna allocating land that may not be suitable for human habitation. I want to take you to the area of Lamontville, and a serious tragedy unfolded there, Minister. So many people dying, and one family losing, I think it was about 3 children who were swept away. And you look at the place where they were staying, it literally sits above the floodplain. And so when these children were swept away, they immediately went down into the river. And you've got to ask yourself, which Induna or chief may possibly be responsible for the Lamontville area where they can allocate land to people? Is there such in a township area?
In a township area, Pauline, which is not under the jurisdiction of Ingonyama Trust, no Amakhosi and Izinduna, the allocation of plots to people are done not by the traditional institution. But if you also go in areas under the Ingonyama Trust, there are areas where Izinduna, not even without the consent of Amakhosi, they do allocate people in a place that is really not conducive for human settlement. That is why, therefore, I say, when His Majesty spoke, I said, this is a joint call which I had initiated with our team, that we need everybody under one roof, that we start identifying these areas and we work together to persuade them, political parties, persuade them to vacate those areas. But what is urgent? Get an alternative place where you will settle them permanently, because in a community hall, life has no privacy and is far from what a person is attached, school, workplace, and all other commodities, water that is reliable. This is an urgent exercise for the government and all stakeholders, and also our people. We want to appeal to them. It is about their lives. It is not about the life of the government. We have to take a responsibility. And lastly, if we can delay our trips, let us do so. If it is not a matter of urgency, and you can see it is raining and the weather alert has been made, let us keep in our household until the rain is over. And if you see it is raining, avoid to be on the roads. As we could see, the roads in eThekwini and around Durban are now always flooded by water, which put the lives of the people in their vehicles in a serious danger.
Final question to you, Minister, and it's a question that is not related to flooding. Spaza shops, your department has been leading this. Tomorrow is the deadline. Do we expect any further extensions, or tomorrow is D-Day?
Tomorrow is the day. There will be no further extensions, Toli. I visited even one center today in Swane Metro, and we communicated that message, and we will make a broad statement tomorrow which says it's a last day, there will be no extension. Anyone who will not be able to register his or her Spaza shop or food handling outlet tomorrow still have an opportunity on Monday next week, but he or she cannot open the existing Spaza shop or food handling outlet, having not gone through the process and have proof in a form of a receipt that indeed the application has been concluded, then is waiting for verification, which will eventually lead to licensing. We want to appeal to our people. There is no need to arrest people. They had ample time from December, January to February to do the application and conclude it. If you have not done it, don't open your business because you will be arrested. Law will be implemented to its full course.
The Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa, thank you very much for your time this evening.